So one of the things that you said when you were talking about your journey, just at the beginning, that I took a note of was um, that there was a lot of suffering happening in your experience, but you were disassociated from it. And I thought that this was
When I was younger,
so
like the
interesting.
first part of my journey.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. So
yeah.
actually, I don't think I've ever had anyone sort of articulate it that way. I feel like I can relate to what was going on after my first experience, my first awakening. But I would love you to sort of unpack that and perhaps talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Mm, right, yeah. So I was involved with this type of practice with a yoga organization that I was part of that was very progressive, but it wasn't just progressive. We were doing type of hatha yoga to very strongly like force the energy rise up, and any kind of negative emotions that were considered negative in that context were condemned quite powerfully,
Oh,
in the social setting. So the practice was literally like even physically pushing those sensations down and kind of then forcing the energy to kind of rise to central channel up and that would be called sublimation of energy in that mindset. And
sublimation energy.
yeah,
So,
that there sublimation of these type of emotions that are
so like
considered
suppression.
negative. Yeah, basically, yeah,
Okay, because
suppression,
it sounds like
and then
suppression to me.
it was total suppression. Like when I look back into it, it was suppression, it was avoidance, it was condemnation of these feelings, and of course that creates a lot of guilt and shame about these feelings. But then there's the judgment of guilt and shame, so it's just like more and more suppression, and the more and more practice at the same time to kind of force the energy through the central channel to rise up, which it doesn't really do because the central channel cannot open up before you have a genuine awakening. But you can kind of dissociate into these mental states by doing this type of practice, like I was doing at that time for years and years and years and years. So there was the initial suffering from my when I was young and from my teenage years, which got then completely suppressed down and because of this type of practice, and there was also a lot of kind of abuse, different type of abuse that happened in that organization. So there would be more trauma that was created while everything was all the time being kind
Oh
of
man.
suppressed. So it was a kind of very profound, how would I say, like alienation from my intuition and intuitive wisdom of the body because of that type of practice.
Yeah.
So of course, then it would take me then a lot of time to when I stop doing all of that, that all of that would then finally be allowed to come come to the space and to be met. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a sad story, It is like
Yeah.
it was a kind of a traumatic experience, and but it's very interesting also for me to look at it now, because at that time I didn't even understand that I was suffering. So it's that powerful, that kind of like hypnosis that it can create, that you start to live in this type of mental world and get satisfaction from them to such an extent that you don't even realize how bad your situation is, basically.
Gosh, that's I haven't met that many people who are part of a sort of spiritual community, let's put it this way. But like everything you said, with the few people that I talked about that and who shared with me those experiences, this is precisely what they were talking about. Like they would even describe it as like a massive disassociation
Mhm.
without knowing that they were disassociating.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like zero awareness of that and how much of all kinds of abuse or inappropriate stuff was happening and used the sort of spirituality to or whatever spiritual beliefs or concepts or whatever to kind of normalize it? Or
Mhm.
can you talk about that, and can you um do you meet people like yourself who've had similar experiences? And
Yeah.
is there actually anything? I know that this is like so generic, but for what it's worth, is there anything um, that you could say to the people who maybe have like little openings of seeing that something is actually not quite right when they're part of that
Mm,
kind of community, and like what to
yeah. Well,
do?
there's tremendous fear of leaving that, even if you start to become aware that something is not quite right. Because if you're um, well, your whole spiritual path has been so bound to that context, it's kind of like you don't really know what's going to come. You're going to leave that behind, maybe, but where do you go from there? Back to the society, and if that didn't already work out, it can kind of feel like, well, like there's just this total unknown, which is great, if you're able to take that leap of faith, and just gradually then life will bring like different type of
Mm-hmm.
contexts and different type of teachings that can actually like support the awakening process, but that doesn't necessarily happen immediately. So there needs to be a lot of trust in your own capacity to
Mm-hmm.
uh, your own truth, basically, that you can find your way. You can find your way even if it feels like you have to let go of everything you thought you were and that the path was about, because the path can never be taken away from you if you have this deep inclination inside of you. It's like your true nature itself is the path, and it's not bound to any particular context. It's not bound to any particular teacher. It's not bound to any particular experience, not to any particular lineage. It's like so much more vaster and profound and free and beyond any imagination. So just trust that. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot going on, and not just in like sort of closed spiritual, like specific spiritual community that operates a certain way and it has a location, but like just in general, just within the wider non-duality, even, there is just so much going on, um, that I consider red flags.
Yeah, yeah. It's so powerful in human beings, this need to belong, and that can be taken advantage by different type of spiritual communities, because it can be so amazing first to get that sense of belonging, especially if you've been on the path and you haven't really been able to be part of so-called normal social uh, belongings. Okay, so
Yeah,
then when you
yeah.
then find something where you can actually then experience that, it can just be such a relief for the system, like biologically again. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so I think that's something important, just to become aware, because that also eventually does unwind itself, that need to belong. And because it's so much part of the identity itself, this
Yeah,
belief that I'm going to be annihilated if I'm not part of something. You really have to go to that deep aloneness in this process in so many ways and in so many times, and that's not
yeah.
also discussed so much in these communities, in this
Nope.
type of communities or teachings, because they are all about the togetherness, and we're doing the practice together and walking the path together. And there's a certain truth to that. Of course, we can share moments with others who are on the path, and it's beautiful, and it can be tremendously like inspiring and um, supportive. But fundamentally, like you walk the path into deep aloneness. That's what the unknowability is. It's like you just plunge yourself into that type of where you can't take anything with you or anyone
Yeah.
with you. You step there alone. Okay. And then when that then relaxes into itself, it's just pure connectivity. Okay, it's pure connectivity, but it's not really togetherness in a sense that we are conditioned to think that togetherness is, because it's based on me being me and you being you, and us sharing some sort of connection between 2 points, and that paradigm, it's gonna collapse. So the whole experience of connectivity is very different in this state. It's a deep intimacy, but it's also inseparable from this empty nature of everything, empty nature of the other and of the self.